You're listening to East of the Rockies, the Michigan Student Softball Podcast on WCBN Sports.
Well, Mr. Burns had done it. The power plant had won it, with Roger Clemens clucking all the while. Mike Scioscia's tragic illness made us smile, while Wade Boggs lay unconscious on the barroom tile. We're talking softball, from Maine to San Diego, talking softball. Mattingly and Canseco, Ken Griffey's grotesquely swollen jaw, Steve Sachs and his running with the law. We're talking Homer, Ozzie and the Straw.
East of the Rockies, Episode 5 on WCBN Sports. I'm Jeremy Parks, joined again by Morris Fabry and Kevin Klein. Gentlemen, how are you doing so far this evening?
A little chilly. We were just at practice, waiting to interview Coach Carol Hutchins and a couple of players, and the practice ran a little bit long. Not only were the winds about 50 miles an hour, but they were also running defensive drills, and Hutch wouldn't let them off the field until they got like 15 right in a row, and it didn't happen. It didn't happen quick.
And it wasn't just 15 in a row, because they were all looking great to us. It was 15 at the discretion of Hutch.
Whoa.
Yeah, so it's like ground ball into center field. You got to make a perfect one-hop strike to third base, thrown against your body. Otherwise, tweet of the whistle, restart the counter back at 0.
Honestly, I've never been so disappointed to hear a whistle blow in my life.
Man. But they needed it.
Oh, they
After
needed it
last
for
weekend.
sure.
Yeah, this defense has not been up to par with the last 2 years' iterations.
All right. Got to start it off with, it's time. Sound the alarms, batten down the hatches, and damn the torpedoes. Guys, it's time to sound the alarms on this season.
The sky is falling.
Things are not
going well.
going
The sky is falling.
California, I predicted 9-1 last week. Morris, you predicted 8-2. Kev, you were the closest at 7-3, 6-3, and a damn one.
Wait, there's no ties in softball?
Right?
What?
Yes, there are. Florida State and their travel planners have ensured that there is a tie on Michigan's schedule this season. 6-3-1 through the California tournament. Really, the only good wins coming against Arizona State twice.
Guys, without looking at last year's schedule, how many times do you think this team got shut out last year?
None.
Wow.
Once.
I'm thinking the Florida game.
The answer
Florida.
is 3 times. They lost to Florida. They lost to Florida State in the College World Series,
yeah.
and they lost a weird one to, I think, Nebraska. But 3 times all of last season, they got shut out 3 times in the last 2 weeks.
It's, like I said, the alarm is where we're at. What happened last week? Kev, Morris, what was the biggest problem? For me, clutch hitting. Getting runners in scoring position and wasting opportunities. The pitching kept them close in most every game, but did you guys see anything different from what I did?
Well, no, I think you stole my answer, but it's the right answer, so it's probably the one that Kev's going to give as well. You got 10 runners on base against Texas A&M, 11 on base against UCLA over the course of 7 innings, and 0 runs to show for any of it. Just no timely hits when it mattered. The power also clearly not quite there for this team yet. Some of the players we expected to step up and hit. We had a few players who had chances at over 15 home runs this season. Right now, I don't think anybody's on pace except for Christner and Canfield. Both have played very solid, but outside of them, not a lot of bright spots in this lineup, especially over the course of the past 2 weeks.
It's so frustrating because in years past we see Michigan cash in when they have opportunities, and that's what you need to do to beat good teams, and they just have not been doing it at all. And it's frustrating because these the bottom of the lineup is very capable. I don't think anybody's gonna argue that, but they're just not.
Oh, I could argue that. Given how they've performed, I could argue that.
I know, but just off the names, there's potential down there, and it's just not coming through, and it's very frustrating. But the only silver lining maybe is that the top of the lineup's still getting on base. So you know the bottom of the lineup is going to come around at some point, and when it does, this team will click on all cylinders like we've expected them to do.
Yeah, 2 of those shutouts came without Natalie Peters in the lineup, if I'm not mistaken.
You are correct.
And she has been such a spark plug at the top of the lineup for this Wolverines team. She had, a little tweak or something or other and had to miss the last 4 games. And that was a big loss for the lineup. It still doesn't excuse getting shut out, but still not a team firing on all cylinders at full strength like perhaps the Bruins and the Baylor Bears were.
See, the only loss that I think we all knew Michigan was probably going to lose a few games. The one that really stings for me is Baylor, because that is a team that no matter how far Michigan has fallen in the rankings or in our minds in terms of expectations, Baylor is still one of the teams where Michigan should beat and should beat handedly. And to be shut out by them, and the offense was atrocious. That was the worst I've seen the offense all year long.
Yeah, not good. Baylor, they did have a very solid weekend for themselves. After beating Michigan, they went on to beat Washington and then beat UCLA 11-6. Finished off the weekend by getting shut out by Cal State Fullerton because
just weird.
The transitive property doesn't necessarily apply to sports.
It was a weekend of almosts, and coming down the line now, you look at the implications of going 6-3-1 in California. This is the first time this week that Michigan has been closed out of the top 16 in the rankings. That, if it holds, which one can't really expect now with Michigan, through what we would see as the heavy end of their schedule. They've got one more tournament in Lexington this weekend that we'll get to later in the show, and then Big Ten play. Room to crawl back up, but at this point, Michigan would not even be hosting a regional, let alone a super regional. So were there any redeeming qualities about this weekend that if you're Michigan making a case down the line this season that you would want to go forward and say, hey, we actually deserve to host something, anything?
Well, I mean, I think the game you look at is the Florida State game, just because how it ended in a tie with the drop dead rule or drop dead time. That is a game where Betza had shut out or had taken care of business in the top of the 8th. Michigan would have had a runner on second, nobody out in the bottom of the 8th. So you like your chances to win that one, and I think if Michigan had gone 7-3 with a win against number 1 Florida State, I think we would be having a different conversation right now. The only thing that goes in their favor is they've played such a tough schedule, and although they haven't really performed terribly well, it's still a tough schedule. So it's not like Michigan's losing to subpar teams. They're losing to good teams and the great teams.
Yeah, and definitely a bright spot from the weekend would be the rotation over the last 2 weeks. The losses, it sucks to not be able to score a run in 21 innings combined against Texas A&M, UCLA, and Baylor. But in all of those games, the rotation faced some pretty good lineups and held them to 3 and 4 runs among the 3 teams. And that's good enough to put you in a position to win a game, if the offense is doing its job. And I think that was the biggest question mark for this team, at least coming into the season, is how well Tara Blanco would perform under the pressure of being a number 2, how well Megan Betza would perform after taking a whole offseason off and taking on a bigger role with this team. And while they've had their ups and downs, I'd say by and large, both of them have answered the call. At
times, they have looked very potent as an offense, I think, this season, but it hasn't been against quality opponents. So you know the talent's there, but I think the difference between this team now and a team from a year ago, 2 years ago, is that ability not only to have the talent to hit, but the wherewithal to hit against the best pitching that you're going to see in the country. Because you look at some of the pitchers that Michigan went up against with the likes of UCLA, with the likes of Baylor. Those are pitchers that are going to have their names in the conversation for some of the lowest ERAs in the country come the end of the season. So not being able to hit against those teams, I think, is the main difference right now between where Michigan stands at this point in the season in 2017 and where they stood in 2016.
Well, and the other thing is, I mean, you look at the games in which Michigan has faced a pretty tough opponent and have come out victorious. The most they've scored, I believe, is 5 runs, and that's against Florida State, in which that one ended in a tie. So
Burroughs did not get the start in that game either. It was Megan King. So that's...
Right. So and that's probably at least partially the reason why. So you look at these games that they're scoring double-digit runs. Yes, the offense is there just on sheer raw talent because that's just how Hutch is able to recruit. But they're just not gelling together. I mean, the double-digit runs that they've scored, Bethune-Cookman, Long Beach State, and I think 2 against NC State, that's it, and St. John's. But other than that, it's been 4-2 wins, 5-3 wins, 7-4 wins, something like that.
Pretty blah stuff, and it really illustrates to me the sheer brilliance that was the Sierra Mountains at the beginning of this lineup, Sierra Lawrence and Sierra Romero. Not only were they excellent at drawing walks, great base runners, great at getting on base, but they could also drive in runners that got on base near the bottom of the lineup. And while the Wolverines haven't had as many runners on from the bottom of the lineup this year as they have in the past 2 years, even when they have been on base, Abby Ramirez and Natalie Peters, they bring a lot to the table offensively, but they're not exactly who you want up at the plate when it's time to drive in runs. Infielders get drawn in, outfielders get drawn in, and the slap hitting style is mostly tailored around getting to first base before they can throw you out there. But when you got multiple bases where you can throw the ball to record and out, the slap hitting utility goes down a little bit,
especially when you have them hitting back to back, which I don't think any of us would say, oh, let's shake up the lineup, because that's where they're cut out to start in that 1 and 2 spot. But you're absolutely right, Mo. Then when Ramirez comes up with the bases loaded, a ground ball to the left side like she usually does, I mean that can result in a force out at home. So I agree with you, Mo.
Yeah, and it's hard to take issue with any lineup tinkering that is done by Coach Carol Hutchins, because in the end, the players who are in any positions in the lineup, they've got to be able to come through.
And at this point, you would have to think, what's going on in the minds of the players in the dugout, and you two had an opportunity to go ahead and do that. So we'll break into the interview portion of the pod today. Going to start off with Kev. You went and spoke with Tara Blanco, who has been both in the circle and at the plate for the Wolverines so far this season, has been more of a presence in the circle than at the plate so far this season. So here is Kevin Klein's interview with Tara Blanco.
So each year you've kind of taken on more responsibility in terms of pitching. Is it hard to balance working on your pitching and working on your hitting at the same time?
I mean, I definitely think it's harder than just being a hitter, because you have another whole position to focus on. But I think I'm doing well balancing them both out when I'm pitching and I'm hitting, and when I'm just playing first base and I'm cheering on Megan and hoping that she does really well.
So you've had a pretty good start to the season in terms of pitching. Knowing that you were probably going to be the number 2 behind Megan this year, was your off season any different?
No, I mean, me and Megan competed all off season. Megan has got a lot of experience, and I mean, I strive to be just like Megan. She's a great pitcher, and I think we do a lot in practice and in the games to push each other.
Have you enjoyed being a mainstay in the rotation, knowing that you'll get 1 or 2 opportunities every weekend to go out there and throw?
Yeah, I mean, that's the rotation, and I'm going to pitch every other game just like Megan is.
Given that you've had a lot of exposure in the circle, is there something that surprised you coming off the season that you had to make an adjustment for, or anything like that?
I don't think anything really surprised me. I was really excited to pitch this year, and I'm really excited to just learn from Megan, and I've learned from her these past 2 years and see what she's had success with, and what I can have success with, and I really learn a lot from her. But this year, I'm gaining more experience in the circle, getting more comfortable, and just building my confidence off of that. Any
one piece of advice that you've really learned from Megan that you've taken to heart?
Just stay loose and spin the ball.
All right. Yeah. So looking at that Florida State game, obviously didn't turn out the way with the drop dead rule or whatnot. What were the thoughts among the team about how that one ended up?
Yeah, well, I mean, we really wanted to finish that game. It was a great game, 2 great teams playing against each other. Got a little chippy, which made each team play better, and it got a lot out of us as a team, and we learned a lot about ourselves from that game, and then going into the ASU game. But we definitely wanted to finish that game, and we'll probably see them later down the road this season.
Did you know that the drop dead time or whatnot was coming up, or all of a sudden it's
we didn't know. Hutch told us after the game that they already discussed that there was going to be a drop dead time.
All right. And then you probably would have, cashed in on those final at-bats, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
Is it fun going back to California for you? I'm sure, were there a lot of friends and family watching you over the last 2 tournaments?
Yeah, I mean, I love going to California. First of all, I love the weather. I love seeing my family. I love seeing my dad and sister out there, my grandpa and grandma. It was a lot of fun, and I love having my dad at the games.
So this year, really successful offensive performance last year. This year, are you seeing that pitchers are attacking you differently?
A little bit, yeah. They're obviously not giving me as good as pitches to hit. I'm more up in the lineup than a little bit than last year. I just really need to simplify it and just stay loose when I'm swinging.
So is that what you kind of been working on?
Yeah, I mean that's what my goal is every year, is just stay loose, get a good pitch, and I just need to implement that more.
Is it frustrating? You've been intentionally walked a few times this year. Mm-hmm. Is it frustrating where I might get intentionally walked? They're pitching around me.
Yeah, it's frustrating, but I have a strong belief in the people behind me that they're going to get it done.
Fair enough. Looking forward, the last tournament where you're going all over the place is coming up this weekend. Are you excited to kind of eventually come back to Alumni Field, start the home stretch?
Yeah, I mean, I love playing at home. I love playing on Alumni Field. I love our fans. I think us as a team, and me especially, I think my best memories are at Alumni Field playing.
All right. And then, so we have a station-wide and podcast-wide debate, and we would like your input on it. So is a hot dog a sandwich?
No.
All right. Well, thank you very much.
Yeah,
I appreciate your time.
Nice meeting you.
Nice meeting you, too.
All right. That was Kev's interview with Tara. Kev, any main points that you really came out of that one thinking anything special of?
Well, I think it was interesting, the Florida State answer when asked, what do you
Hutch
think?
knew.
Hutch knew. No one else
Conspiracy.
did. But it definitely had to be disappointing for them because they had to know that game could have been in the win column. And but it was good for them to respond later that day against Arizona State. And I think at this point she recognizes that she's struggling a little bit at the plate and is continuously working to drive the ball a little better, to be a little more patient. And you have to think that bat's going to come around. But if anything to take away from Tara Blanco this season is how good she has been in the rotation.
Yeah, it takes a Herculean effort to make the strides that she has in the circle and also be able to sustain the level of performance that she had in the batter's box last year. And, she said it herself, it's like learning a whole new position in addition to maintaining or hitting at such a high level. So, while I didn't get great answers in the opening press conference of the year when asking about, whether she would be able to sustain that, I do think it's probably taken its toll to some degree. And
not a great opportunity. Hasn't seen nearly as much to hitting behind the likes of Sierra Lawrence.
The sample sizes are still small, JP.
Well, they're getting bigger,
I mean,
but the walks are definitely there. She has seen a lot of garbage pitches that people are pitching around her, and that's got to make it difficult for the average at the plate. But the OBP, not terrible, a lot better than the average.
But if you're if Tara Blanco is the cleanup hitter, 400 on base percentage is great, but you would rather have that slugging percentage up.
Yeah, you want to see the power. And I think that, we don't have a lot of insight as to any mechanical aspects of her plate that might be thrown off. And I'm not sure that it was caught in the audio that we got for the Carol Hutchins interview, but some guys from the Daily were talking with her maybe before I turned on my recorder, but she mentioned that when Tara starts to try too hard up there at the plate, her swing gets big, gets long. Maybe she's trying to do much to drive the ball.
We've seen that in a lot of Michigan hitters, I think, so far this year, and especially in those clutch hitting situations where they used to be so calm, cool, and collected at the plate. They could always put something in play, and now it seems like every time this team is faced with a big opportunity, somebody's trying to win the game with one swing of the bat.
And you're almost holding your breath like, come on, just take a couple pitches here. Let's calm down. And it's almost like you need that veteran presence to say, hey, just take a step back. Even if you got to take a strike, just let that pitch come to you, and the results will show.
Yeah, and that's one of the reasons why I'm not chicken little about this team. I think that they will be able to turn things around on the offensive end of things. I think you're going to see a very competitive squad come season's end, whether they host a regional or play in a regional, because they know that it's a lot of mental things involved in their offensive struggles so far, and I think they have the coaching staff, they have the talent, they have the wherewithal to reverse these trends. by taking it easy.
And that was Kevin's interview with Tara Blanco. We'll switch over to Soul Plate performer Mo. You had the opportunity to speak to the back end of the Slap Sisters combo. You talked to Natalie Peters 2 weeks ago, and today after practice had an opportunity to speak to another veteran presence on this team, Abby Ramirez. So without further ado, here is Mo's interview with Abby.
All right, so you've switched positions both in the field and earlier on in your career, and now this season in the lineup. Is your versatility something that you take pride in?
Yeah, definitely. I kind of just do whatever needs to be done. Like whatever is asked of me, I'm happy to fit into that role. Like I don't really have a preference, like you mentioned before about preferences. I just kind of do whatever is going to help the team. So.
Yeah, I don't know how much you like that question. So I talked to Natalie Peters a couple weeks ago about her approach at the plate. She said she was originally a righty until 8th grade. And you were a power hitter even back in high school. So describe to me a bit your development as a hitter.
In high school, I switched back and forth, and I was recruited as a slapper. So I was I don't think they really even knew that I was a righty until I got here my senior year or something. So I replayed with it a little bit, but I always just wanted to focus on one and get that going. And then I think as I've gotten older, I've developed my slapping. I came in and I was pretty much just a touch slapper. I would just try to beat everything out. Where now I'm like more of a power slapper and know that I have the power to hit out of the infield. So I think just I've grown that way, and then also I think my confidence has grown as well.
All right. Also, one tiny note. We took to calling you and Natalie the Slap Sisters because you guys hit in sequence in the lineup. What do you think?
Yeah.
Can we keep doing that?
Yeah, go ahead. Go for it.
All right, good.
We laughed about it a little bit, so
good.
She told me.
So you've got, I think, only 2 home runs in your college career, both in one weekend against Rutgers. What happened there?
I was just seeing the ball really well that weekend. It was just one of those weekends when the ball looks like a beach ball. And my timing was on, so, just things fell into place that weekend. So if I could continue or get that back, that would be ideal. So
For sure. So after playing next to Sierra Romero the past 3 years, you got a new teammate up the middle in Faith Canfield. Have there been any defensive kinks to work out with, new partners?
Actually, no, not at all. Faith has stepped up really well. She, at second base especially, she helps me out just as much as I help her out. We're always talking, so I think we click really well, and we haven't skipped a beat there for sure.
Yeah. Well, you've had a great career so far at Michigan. Not over yet, but what would you say, the most proud of that you've accomplished here?
I think just the friends that I've made, the teammates that I've made. I know some of my teammates, the seniors, when I was a freshman, I still talk to. So just having that family culture is something that is probably the biggest thing I'll take away.
All right. And so speaking of careers and legacies, you're leaving a solid one behind, and I think Madison Uden is probably the one pegged to fill your shoes. Have you taken her under your wing at all? What kinds of things can we expect out of her next season? And
Maddie's actually my backside, so we have backsides on the team. Everyone has a sister, big sister, little sister, but we call them backsides. So we obviously are see a lot of each other at practices. We're at the same position, so definitely when she, some things took me a while to understand when I was a freshman. So I've been helping her with that, and she's been fitting in very well and understanding things. She's getting better, and I think once she, gets more experience and more confidence, she's going to do really well.
All right. So you've seen a lot of pitchers in front of you playing defense. Who's been your favorite pitcher to play defense behind? If you had to pick a favorite. It's
tough. I mean, I've played behind Megan for 4 years, so I mean, I wouldn't say favorite, but I'm just, I've had probably the most experience behind her, and she's definitely really intense. So that in her approach sets the tone for the rest of the game. So I think she's always done a really good job of that, and always setting the tone for us and staying focused.
All right. So dugout rituals and chants are a big part of the game. Most notably, the dugout always sings Gasolina when you're at the plate. How much planning and effort goes into coordinating that kind of stuff?
It's funny because it kind of just happens. Like, randomly, someone will start, like, singing something random, and then it catches on, and we're like, hey, we like that. Like, let's keep doing that. And then Nikki Wald, like, we've always had someone do beats in there, so she's always making up new beats, and we're just, like, dancing and having fun, and it helps keep us loose, so it's definitely a lot of fun.
Is that going to be your walk-up song then this year?
It will, yes.
Right.
Yeah, it's a fan favorite, so I got a lot. When I tried to change it one year, I got a lot of backlash on it. So.
Yeah, I can imagine.
Yeah.
So Big Ten season's coming around the corner before you know it. You grew up in Big Ten country. Are there any matchups that you relish in particular?
No, I think every single one we have to take the same approach to, and every single one's big because, we don't get to play everyone in the Big Ten, so your record really matters. So just every single game and taking it one pitch at a time. I am really excited to host the Big Ten tournament. That's really cool. I wasn't expecting it, so it was really exciting news to hear, so I'm excited for that.
All right. Did you guys get to go out much in California and enjoy spring break, or was it mostly just business?
Mostly business, but we had a few days off. The one day off, it actually rained the whole day in Palm Springs, so a few of us went shopping. But and then we actually took a team trip and got a dance lesson. It was ballroom dance. Yeah, so that was interesting.
Whose idea was that?
The coaches surprised us with it. Yeah, so it was fun. A lot of people were kind of like skeptical about it at first, but then once we got going, we always want to like accomplish whatever we're trying to do. So once we all got the numbers and steps down, we were all really excited. It was a lot of fun. So
good to hear. And finally, one question that we ask everyone we interview: is a hot dog a sandwich?
No.
No.
All right. Go with no.
All right, that's all I got for you. Thanks for your time.
Thanks.
And that was Morris's interview with the Wolverine shortstop, Abby Ramirez. Guys, what did you think of that interview? Really flowed well. Leo Blavin, another member of WCBN, said Abby Ramirez really wants to have a career in media, and I think it showed through in that interview. Mo?
Yeah, I totally agree. It was a very easy conversation throughout, and it definitely helped me out as I have very limited experience as far as interviews are concerned, so every little bit helps. And we might see a bit of a showcase of that interview inability later on in this podcast.
Ooh, dropping a little cherry right there.
That's what we call foreshadowing.
Yep. Little bit of looking forward into the airtime here. But Abby Ramirez, again, has, I think, in moving from a 9-hitter to a top-of-the-order hitter for the majority of the game so far this year, not necessarily seeing better pitches maybe than she did as a 9-hitter, but really at the top of that order has shown a lot of prowess at the plate. I mean, she's increased her power numbers in terms of extra base hits. The doubles column looking really well. She's got the third best average on the team at the moment right now, hitting .368 on the season. So the only people that are hitting better are obviously Kelly Christner, who has been just torrid, and Natalie Peters. But Ramirez has played every single game so far, so she has an even bigger sample plate than Natalie Peters. But thoughts on what she's changed at the plate? Anything in the interview or post that maybe came up about how she's performing better now than she ever has been?
Well, I mean, I think it's something that we weren't around to see the beginning of her development as a slapper at the University of Michigan. But, she talked about how she started off just trying to poke the ball into the left side of the infield. And we saw from the outset of this season, the opening weekend in Tampa, she drove one over the head of a left fielder for a long extra base double. And her evolution in the power department, her ability to do more than just tap it past the infield is, I think, a testament, first of all, to her work ethic, and second of all, to the work that this coaching staff can do with players and developing her into such a solid all-around player.
Oh, her development, I mean, and she said it in the interview, she went from, I forget the actual word she used, but I think it was a light tapper to a power slapper to be able to get it out of the infield, and that has really been a nice surprise at the top of the order. I don't think anyone is surprised that she's hitting really well, but I just think she is such a more dynamic hitter than what she was maybe at the bottom of the order. Just the mindset is changed, and she's been very successful doing it.
And I think there's nobody probably that could be less surprised with Abby Ramirez really showing out here this season than Coach Carol Hutchins. And that's going to lead us into probably my new favorite segment that we're going to have here on East of the Rockies.
It's going to be better next week. That's all I can say.
It's time for Mo Interviews Hutch, the part of the show where Morris Fabry interviews Coach Carol Hutchins. And Mo, we're going to break into the actual interview itself with Hutch. You met with her after practice today, before meeting with Abby Ramirez or after meeting with Abby Ramirez. And here's the audio from that interview.
Tara Blanco has struggled so far to begin the season. Is there anything specifically that you've been working with her in order to overcome those offensive struggles?
Well, Tara's, tries too hard and really tries too hard so her swing gets real big. And we did a couple of good drills. We did a drill the last day, and we did the same drill today. That helps you stay short to the ball and smack it. And she was better at my station, I can tell you that. But she's got to quit trying.
Faith Canfield hit over 500 last week, and she was a real bright spot for you. What have you seen from her this season that's allowed her to make that jump in her sophomore year?
Confidence. She's just playing with confidence, and her confidence keeps growing. She works hard, and she gets her confidence in that.
So given that the lineup has been so flexible this year, how much does player input weigh into lineup construction, if anything at all?
What's player input?
Like just, player preference as to where they'd like to hit. Is there any of that involved?
You can ask the players.
That's fair. So you guys played a lot of top competition over the last couple of weeks in California. Are there any teams out there that really impressed you or surprised you?
No.
All right. So the rotation's been a bright spot this year. Any particular aspects of Megan Tara Lear's performance that have impressed you?
If you look at our statistically, our pitching keeps us in the game. That's kind of their role. Just keep us in the game. Give us a chance to win it. Our defense plays well, and our offense hits. The key is in the tough games, we haven't been tough enough in really any of the categories. We just need to be a little bit tougher. We're right there. And a lot of it's just confidence and believing. We've got to believe in ourselves.
All right. And which areas in particular do you see the most room for improvement heading forward?
Well, I'd like to see us hit better with runners in scoring position. I think that's key. We're right there, but we just need to get some key hits, and we need people not to try harder and just to lock in and trust and to see when they have confidence and believe in each other, it makes it easier for those things to occur. But if we don't believe in each other, it means I'm going to go to the plate to do it by myself, and that's not working.
I don't think that's even legal. All right. Thank you. That's it for me.
Everybody good?
Okay, that was Mo's interview with Coach Carol Hutchins.
It's better every time. Honestly, I've heard that interview, the audio, probably 4 times now, and every time I laugh just a little bit harder.
I love it. I look forward to her just stonewalling me at any future stuff. Kev, I don't even want you to try to interview Coach Hutchins. This is my gig.
It's Mo's territory.
I literally have no interest in doing that. My questions just wouldn't stand up to her.
I love it. I think she has a great sense of humor about the whole thing. And while she's not totally devoted to giving me the sound bites that would make me out to be a good interview and really look great on the podcast, I think they're at least entertaining to listen to. And through that harsh criticism, I think I can develop my technique as an interviewer, and I think everybody gets something out of it.
Sad violin is without a doubt one of the best evolutions that we've had so far.
What do you think of the spin there? Spin zone. Did I make it sound like I was happy with what happened?
Yes, I think you.
Yeah, it's okay. You could cry off the air, like just after. This,
the tears are flowing. No, she gave better answers to the daily folks, I'd say, and we got a couple of those at the beginning of the recording. Maybe in the weeks to come, I'll just record their questions and put them on the pod instead. But yeah, it is what it is. She's a tough interview, but she's obviously got a ton of knowledge, and
it gets better.
I'm obviously not at that level yet.
I think
you're breaking in.
I think what we have to do now, we just have to ask every player we interview, hey, do you have any input on where you bad in the lineup? Because obviously that's what Hutch told us. You got to go with Hutch.
Mo, you're just going to have to talk to Marley for all your concerns. Mo has hair from Marley on his pant legs still, was palling around.
It's a good dog, Jeremy. It's a very
beautiful dog.
That dog walks around with his leash all over the place. It's great. It's actually a sight to see. It's very funny.
Carried it in his mouth, yeah. And he's got the habit of rubbing his butt up against you while you are petting him, which to me doesn't sound like a learned behavior because it made me want to stop petting him. But he's old enough that he can get away with whatever.
The dog whisperer.
We're going to have to devote an entire podcast to that dog.
All right, that concludes the interview portion of the pod this week. We're going to move in. Before we get into Lexington, we're going to do a quick fun segment here. We're going to break it in with a little bit of toss-up time. So, Kev, you have come up with this week's toss-ups. Give them to me one at a time, and Mo and I will break them down with you. So, first toss-up of the week.
Man, that is a good sound effect. Wow.
It's a good sound effect right there.
Oh, man, that's better than anything I could come up with. More starts at catcher this weekend. 4 games, 2 against Kentucky, 1 against Evansville, the other against...
The schedule has changed. We'll get to that with the Evansville.
Against someone.
Or with the
against
Kentucky
someone. But more starts at catcher this weekend. Alex Subject or Katie Alexander?
Now, Jeremy, am I right in saying that Alex Subject was your breakout player this season?
She was. And for the opening series, it really seemed like that was going to stick. But the plate numbers have dropped, and her time defensively behind the plate has seemingly dropped a little bit as well after the California run.
So I'll go first. I think that it's most likely that we'll see a 2-2 split, but if I had to lean in one direction, it would probably be toward Katie Alexander. At this point, I think it's well established what you're getting out of either catcher. Subject has a better arm behind the plate. Alexander probably a better receiver. Subject more power potential. Alexander's had better stats offensively so far. I think it's going to come down to who starts first, but I think I'm leaning toward Alexander, at least in this instance.
Law of averages, Subject's numbers have to come back up after a while. I think I'm like you. I think it's a 2-2 split over the weekend, but if I needed to take a toss-up, I'll take it in the light of who will perform better in those 2 starts apiece, and I'm going to say Alex Subject comes back at the plate against less talented pitching this weekend and performs fairly well at the plate to boot with the defensive stats.
Next.
Toss-up number 2.
Will there be 2 teams from the Big Ten to host a regional this year?
No.
I'm going to say yes, Jeremy. I have faith in this Michigan team to turn things around. I don't even know if it's going to be this weekend against Kentucky. They've got an look, it's me coming off as the bullish one and you the pessimist, unless you think that Minnesota's totally going to crater the rest of the season.
Why did you have to ruin it?
Yeah, get out of here. Minnesota is an excellent softball team. They've performed as well as they possibly could in their non-conference slate so far, and I think they're going to run roughshod over a weak Big Ten. I also think Michigan's offense is going to round into form. I think you're going to see the beginning of that offensive turnaround this weekend against Kentucky. We'll get more into that in a little bit, but I'm cautiously optimistic about this team, maybe because they've played so crappy as of late.
I say no because I think, and it isn't Minnesota, I think it's Michigan that falls on the short end of the stick. Although Minnesota will lose their first game this weekend in Seattle when they play Washington twice. They will drop at least one of those games. But Michigan is a team right now that seems lost with runners in scoring position, and based off the current climate, I think even despite the fact that they're about to get into Big Ten competition, which seemingly shouldn't be as difficult, I think this is a down year again, and I would not be surprised at all if it is just Minnesota as the only Big Ten team to host a regional.
Next.
All right. Time for toss-up number 3.
Michigan wins this weekend or Michigan home runs this weekend?
That's a real tough one. I'm going with home runs. I think Michigan, I'm not too confident in their ability to go 4-0. I think the turnaround's coming for this team. I don't know if it's coming as immediately as in a couple of days. And I think the power will also find itself. I think you'll see Aiden Falk start to go yard some more. Monty's got to turn around in the power department sooner or later. And you got the usual suspects, Christner and Canfield, who have been tattooing the ball as of late. So I say they hit 4 or 5 home runs this weekend. Whether it results in 4 wins remains to be seen.
Yeah, I think more wins than home runs. This team has not displayed a lot of power. I do think they win at least 3 this weekend, if not all 4. Again, we're going to segue in a minute into Lexington, but it's looking like Michigan is going to play Kentucky twice now instead of playing Dayton. So that makes the order even taller, although that does leave more opportunity for Michigan to put better wins on its resume. Kentucky's coming into the weekend ranked 19th, so it's obviously no slouch to play twice. But I think Michigan wins at least 3, if not 4, but I don't think they hit a lot of homers. That's just not the style of this team at this point. Not really sure about the confines in Lexington, if that's hitter-friendly or not, but it's the variance is not extremely large like it would be in an MLB ballpark. But, yeah, I'm going to go with wins.
It's going to be cold in Lexington in the 30s, so the ball won't be flying very much as well.
They'll defy the odds.
All right, we're going to break into Lexington with that. Kev, you are headed down to Lexington this weekend with Austin Falco and Dalton Pataki to call those games over Saturday and Sunday. Quick note, we've mentioned it a few times on the broadcast already. Schedule change. Right now, it looks like Evansville is at 10 a.m. on Saturday, and then instead of Dayton at noon, it'll be Kentucky for the first time, and then Sunday, Kent State at noon, and 2 o'clock, Kentucky for round 2. Anything that you can see so far in the scouting report? We're going to try and keep it pretty brief on this end, but nothing really that we were worthy of digging for on Evansville or Kent State, Kentucky being the only ranked opponent that Michigan will see this weekend. Anything that you can tell us in terms of advanced scouting on the Wildcats?
Kentucky's a legitimate team. They've had just as much tough competition as the Wolverines have faced so far. They actually beat UCLA in 2 meetings, beat them 1 in 2 meetings earlier this year, and they've fallen to some good teams. They've beaten some good teams, but there's been a few games here and there where they don't perform up to snuff. But that's going to be a tough opponent, and I think it's really important for Michigan to sweep Kentucky, because this is going to be the Wolverines' last grab at a real legitimate top 25 opponent until you get into the Big Ten tournament and whatnot, because I don't really foresee anybody in the Big Ten outside of Minnesota being ranked for an extended period of time, and they don't face the Gophers in regular season play. So these 2 games against Kentucky, very important.
Yeah, and I think every game is about as important as another in the non-conference slate for the Wolverines as far as their non-conference foes. To me, it's immaterial whether they win or lose. I know that a lot of the non-conference slate is geared, at least in our minds, toward making a regional, but I'd say I'm more in the Hutch camp on this one, in that it's just more about getting the experience against top teams, knowing the level that you have to get to by the end of the season. So I'm not too excited as to where this team ranks at year's end. I'm just more looking forward to how they're playing. So I'm not putting much stock into this showdown with Kentucky. While obviously I'd like to see Michigan win all the games, I'm not going to be too broken up if they lose a couple, because they're not at their peak form right now.
So we'll take our time now to go through with predictions really quick. Kev, we'll start with you.
They have to go 4-0. I don't think they will go 4-0, but they have to, because if they don't, you start racking up 7, 8, 9 losses and account for a few mishaps in Big Ten play. This season could turn south.
I say they go 3-1 on the weekend. I think that's fair given how they've played so far. I think they're going to hit the ball well against the lesser teams and probably hit the ball well against Kentucky, but some regression's got to be coming for the rotation, no? They've played so solid this year.
I was on the fence between 3 and 4 wins, but bullish as ever, Michigan goes 4-0. I don't think they do it by large margins against Kentucky, but I think they pull out 2 big wins against a tough ranked opponent, and I think that really is a turning point for this team. Sadly, it's going to come late on into the game against their tougher competition, but I think they're going to turn in and run train on conference play behind 2 really good wins this weekend in Lexington. Kev, I really hope you get to see 2 wins against Kentucky.
I do too. I'm glad my name's finally being called.
I think we're all but assuming that Evansville and Kent State are wins. One small note, Michigan does play Kent State 3 times again in a week, so they play 2 games, a doubleheader on Saturday the 18th and a Sunday weekend cap on the 19th. So they'll see them again here in Ann Arbor in about a week's time.
The Golden Rockets, right?
The Gold Streaks? Gold Rock, something like that.
We'll get our stats boy on it right now.
I know somebody from my high school that went to Kent State, which is really weird, seeing as I went to high school in the state of Michigan, but somebody decided to go to...
They're going to be the golden nectar this team needs to sate their hunger for wins and turn the ship around.
The Golden Flashes. Excuse me.
Golden Flashes.
I was thinking of the Toledo Rockets. I apologize to all Kent State listeners out there.
It's all Ohio. Screw Ohio.
Oof. All right, tough words. This is a family program, Morris.
I was going to say, can we
forget
keep it G?
Ohio?
Okay.
CeeLo.
That brings us to about the end of this week's pod. We're going to close up with one more fun segment to end the show, and that's going to be the new segment is called Fill in the
Cow.
Fill in the
Shoelace.
No. Fill in the blanks is the name of the segment.
That was going to be my next guess.
Pretty close, though.
That was not going to be my next guess.
I know it wasn't. I figured I'd stop you at 2. Mo, not big on Mad Libs. Although I honestly couldn't tell you the difference between like an adverb and a regular verb.
It's not.
Yeah.
This is not grammar class. This is softball class, and we're gonna educate you.
Yep. Fill in the blanks. Kev, you've got the blanks ready to go, and Mo and I will respond in kind. So we're gonna do this rapid fire. Like we'll come up with a blank, and then we'll do them as quickly as we can to not give too much time to think.
The biggest problem on the team is blank.
Cow.
Hitting.
Timely hitting. Yeah.
Timely hitting. I think that goes without saying. We harp on it time and time again.
And you can answer too, Kev.
Oh, thanks, guys. Appreciate that.
The biggest problem on the team is?
Oh, well, now you put me
For
on the
you.
spot. Hitting.
Oh, oof, okay.
Sweep.
Fill in the blank number 2.
Tara Blanco having more wins than Mega Betsa is blank.
Encouraging.
Unique.
Coincidental. This will not stand.
That's the best answer.
Michigan will finish blank in the Big Ten.
Wait. Regular season or tournament?
Second in the regular season,
shoot.
second in the tournament, first in year-end rankings.
Wow. You know what? That's a lot of blanks. Wow.
Second in regular season.
It can
first
be a
in the
wide
tournament.
blank.
First in the tournament.
I'm going to say third in regular season, first in the tournament, first in our hearts, first in rankings, number 1, winning it all.
First in the Big Ten now, first in the Big Ten forever.
All right, this is my personal favorite. Number 4, the final one. Most interviews with Hutch are blank.
Silly.
A work in progress, a learning experience.
It's one word.
Come on, it's not a phrase.
Comedy.
Comedy. That's a good one. Silly.
Pathetic.
Yeah. No, it had to go there. It did.
Not too bad. Guys, any final thoughts? We'll end with our normal segment. One thing you learned, one thing you still want to know on this week, the 5th week of East of the Rockies.
One thing I learned was the hard way that I have to come up with some better interview questions. I feel like that's been a lesson that I've learned in past pods too, but I guess I didn't learn them too well. One thing that I still want to know, I want to know what the rest of the team thinks about this hot dog sandwich thing, because it's a couple strikes against me. Both Abby and Tara said no. And in the end, I want to know what Hutch thinks, but I got to build my way up to asking her that question.
We're gonna clip all those yes no answers. We're gonna put them in one of these podcasts, the very last one. We're tallying them up.
Kev, one thing you learned, one thing you still want to know.
One thing I learned. I mean, I learned that over these California games, like the rotation's really good. I learned that. And I think I solidified it in my head that the rotation is legitimate even behind Betsa. One thing I want to know is how many more times is Morris going to falter when asking Hutch questions?
We're just going to harp on that, aren't we?
One other thing I want to know is what Ramirez and Peters actually think about the Slap Sisters comment. I mean, that's classic.
One thing I learned is that the Slap Sisters is, at the very least, a good giggle for the tandem on the team and a better giggle for us and the listeners. One thing that I still want to know is whatever happened to Michigan being a clutch hitting team. They used to be so good. 2-out situations, 2-out rallies, big game moments where they were down a run or two and they could scratch some across. Can't seem to do that at this point. But that's it for me. Any closing thoughts from you guys before we head on out?
In the words of Hutch, nope.
Well, we'll let the great one bring it on out then. You've been listening to episode 5 of East of the Rockies. For Kevin Klein, Morris Fabry, I've been Jeremy Parks. We'll leave you with a good night and a Go Blue. Little bottle rocket, ship it on the Frisco.
When we jump up running, just like that, brother, we're far